Oh, should I move my Pepsi can? Sorry, everyone. Anyway, hello everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. Today, we are going to talk about the main character of Pretty Little Liars. I am on another rewatch. Are we surprised? I know I complain about the show a lot, but I love it. It's my ultimate comfort show. I love it so much. This is probably like my 8th rewatch or something crazy like that. I love it. Amazing. But I was thinking when I am watching it again, kind of the different ways the show move between main characters. In my personal opinion, I think there's 3 main characters in this show, and I think there's a secret main character in the show as well. I opened up a little Google document. I got my GCSE English language skills out. My A in GCSE English language. I started to write, and I put together kind of a little topic speaking about the main characters, because obviously it seems like the most kind of obvious thing that the main characters are the Pretty Little Liars. That obviously seems like the main thing. But I want you to think again, because in terms of focus, the show deliberately focuses on certain characters within the main characters, if that makes sense. It's gonna make sense once I explain it, and once I talk to you everything and kind of my opinions on it. And then I have to talk about one character which I feel that she gets left out quite a lot, and I don't know really why that is. We're gonna talk about who is the main character on Pretty Little Liars. Obviously, like I said, it seems really obvious, like, oh, the main girls are the main characters, right? In my personal opinion, yes, but I think it shifts throughout the entire show, if that makes any sense. There's 3 people who I think are the main characters of Pretty Little Liars, and there's one secret character which I think is obviously a main character, but there's kind of context to it that I kind of want to add to it. So let's move on to the first main character that I'm thinking of anyways. The sun's coming out. Great. Let me turn the brightness down again. So it's safe to say there's obviously 7 seasons of Pretty Little Liars, and the story shifts a lot, and there's different changes within the plot. And when I was rewatching it, it was really interesting because I think they set up a lot of people to kind of be the main character, but then when something else came along, they immediately shifted it to that. What I mean by that is I think the first main character, and really who kind of like, I don't know if she had intention to be a main character throughout the entire show, but the intention in season 1 and 2 was very much there, is Arya. And I say this because the show literally opens up with Arya. We obviously have, the night in the barn, I heard a scream situation. And then Arya is the first person we see after that, and after the 1-year time jump. She quite literally opens the show, and we see her moving back from Iceland and kind of reintroducing herself to Rosewood through her eyes. The show, especially in the pilot episode, is through the eyes of Arya.
It's weird to be home.
I really like as well, the show opens up with Arya looking in a mirror. It's like a reflection of everything that's happened, and she's now coming back, and as an audience, we're now going to reflect on the show and going to see what's going to happen. And I find it really interesting that there is direct parallels, and every time the story kind of restarts itself, the show opens back up with Arya. And I mean this by obviously what I just said, that after the 1-year time jump, after Alison's disappearance, the show opens up through the eyes of Arya. She's the first person that we see. And then season 3, episode 1, when Mona has just been revealed as A, and the story has kind of reset itself. We're going to have a new A, some new stories. The show does another exact scene like this. So we're seeing it again, a new start. Not to mention, obviously, she is the one doing the shush in the intro. And I always found that quite like, obviously it could just been a random thing of why they chose Arya to be the one to do the shush. But I feel like for a show like Pretty Little Lies, there must have been some intent behind it. And I always wondered regarding the shush, like, okay, what made them choose that? And when you actually rewatch season 1 and 2, Arya kind of is the main character for these 2 seasons. So I wonder if that was the intention to set Arya up like that. Like, we're seeing everything from her perspective. She opens the show with every episode by doing the shush, and we're now seeing things from her view. As well as this, Arya literally introduces us to Rosewood. Rosewood is obviously the center of everything, and I have a few sayings. I like to say that all roads lead back to Radley, and I like to say all roads lead back to Rosewood, and I'll save my other saying because I want to do another video on that one. Rosewood is such a big thing in the story. It is such a big thing. Everything is in Rosewood. Everything revolves around Rosewood. She literally introduces us to Rosewood. She's reintroducing herself to Rosewood, but she's also introducing us as an audience. We grow to learn what Rosewood is through Arya, through the eyes of Arya. And ultimately, Arya is the main focal point of the show at this stage. The show opens up with Arya. Arya is the first person to receive a text from A. Everything starts once Arya returns. It's really interesting. Why didn't A start when Arya was away? As soon as Arya was back, A started. Now, as well as this, the pilot very much, Arya shows us around Rosewood through the eyes of her. Do you know what I mean? As in, we follow her when she takes Mike to practice. We follow her going to the bar where she meets Ezra. We follow her going to school the next day, her first day back at Rosewood. And then we see her meet up with Emily, and they kind of reminisce about things. And then we see Arya kind of see who Hannah and Mona are now through the eyes of Arya. And then we see the whole Ezra reveal through the eyes of Arya. Everything, especially the pilot episode, is done specifically through Arya. As well as this, Arya's family really takes center stage through season 1 and 2. Obviously, we have the whole kind of cheating scandal that goes on in Arya's family. Arya's family in season 1 and 2 are probably the most of the families that we are shown. We're shown other family members, obviously, and other family members have their stories. But Arya's family is a huge focus. I feel like a lot of the plot revolves around this cheating thing that happens. We get very used to the likes of Ella and Byron and Mike, and they're very big characters quite early on in the story. And I think that's because Arya was intended to be the main character, so the main story was kind of meant to be focused around her. And ultimately, the Arya's story with Ezra was also such a focal point for the show. Honestly, the Ezra and Arya thing is a continuous thing throughout the entire show. That just shows real intent for me. They carried it throughout the entire show. So whatever they were setting up in the pilot was going to carry on. So was going to stay with Arya. That was going to be her story. And the pilot was so focused on the Ezra and Arya thing that she kind of had the first kind of big storyline kind of in her hands. Everything was kind of set up from her. The girls had secrets, obviously, when Alison was alive, but the first kind of secret post Alison was the whole Ezra Arya thing, and that kind of kicked off everything. The Ezra and Arya thing had huge repercussions for kind of the rest of the show. It wasn't just a thing that had happened, it was a continuous thing, and there were lots of kind of consequences that kind of came from that, especially with like sending the letter to Ella about Byron's affair. There was huge repercussions, and we kind of learned how dangerous A was when it came to Arya and through the eyes of Arya. The Arya and Ezra relationship gets so much focus. The writers really, really want you to like this relationship. They really do. And honestly, they successfully gaslighted me when I was 13 years old. So, I mean, it kind of worked. Like, it is such a main relationship. If Arya ever got another partner on the show or another kind of romantic interest. Sorry, the sun is shining and I have a white desk, so it's like reflecting and it's really hurting my eyes. But whenever Arya would get another boyfriend on the show, you automatically couldn't root for that relationship, which was probably a lot more healthier. Definitely, because the Ezra and Arya thing, it was them or nothing. She, in my eyes, was like the main relationship. Because obviously we had like Hannah and Caleb and Toby and Spencer and Emily and like Maya, or like whatever was going on with Emily. But I always felt like if we had like a hierarchy of relationships, Ezra and Arya were very much on top, you know? As well as this, Arya's friendship with Alison is hugely focused on at the start of the show. And obviously Alison De Laurentiis is the show. Alison De Laurentiis is Pretty Little Liars. And when you have a whole mystery of who killed Alison De Laurentiis, and you are showing us that Arya and Alison were very, very close, I think that's huge intent to show that this is the main, like, friend. Do you know what I mean? But also, Arya had the first flashback with Alison, and we learned who Alison was, kind of presented first through the eyes of Arya and through Arya's experience with her. Everything is literally done through the eyes of Arya, especially in the pilot episode. Ultimately, I think there's several times where it's reiterated that Arya was Alison's favorite. Also was very kind of less threatening towards Arya. Arya definitely went through it, but when you compare the treatment of the girls, Arya definitely had it the least worse. And I feel like that's a thing. Like, you know, when you're watching a show and the main character never feels at risk. Like, I never feel like they're, like, gonna die. Like, a good example of this is Stranger Things. There's not once in Stranger Things where I feel like the main characters are gonna die, because they have to play it safe. They have to keep the main characters alive and safe. And I feel like that is the same thing with Arya. They wanted her to be kept safe because she was kind of the star of the show. And obviously Lucy Hale at that time was really up and coming. She is a phenomenal actress. And she was kind of, I guess, the most well-known at that point. So they obviously were going to build the show kind of around her and start from there. I think Alison is the secret main character of the show. And hear me out, because I know how ridiculous that is going to sound, because like the whole show is Alison De Laurentiis. Alison De Laurentiis, it's... Guys, I don't think she's really a main character. And that's going to sound crazy, I know. But up until season 5, we only meet Alison through flashbacks. She's certainly a main character, absolutely. But I think it's kind of like a hidden secret character. Or like a less kind of like a humbled main character. Because obviously the whole show is her. The whole show is what happened to Alison De Laurentiis. But we don't really see her until season 5. And when she comes back and she has her whole redemption arc, that isn't Alison De Laurentiis. I'm very against her redemption arc. And I truly don't think when she came back, she was even a main character then. I think Rosewood outgrown Alison De Laurentiis. I think the Liars outgrew Alison. And I think Alison was still stuck in the timeline of being that teenager that she used to be. I truly don't think she's a main character when she comes back. I never really counted her as a liar when she came back, really. In my eyes, she was never part of that group again. I don't see her as part of that group. I don't see her as a main character, because when she came back, someone else takes the show, which I'm going to speak about. I don't know, I didn't really see Alison as that, and her redemption arc really tamed Alison down. I personally didn't like the redemption arc. Redemption arc is very subjective, so I understand people that do, but personally I didn't like it. And I think when she came back, she kind of took a step back from the show, and it was the liars that kind of took the step forward. She had storylines when she came back, and she had big ones. I truly never saw her as a main character, so that's why I label her as kind of like the hidden or like secret main character, because she's very much a main character. She also isn't. But also, I think it's interesting because, like I said previously, especially the pilot episode, we see everything through Arya's perspective. This allows us to have fresh eyes on Rosewood and fresh eyes on the liars and the experiences of Rosewood. Through the eyes of Arya, we see a fresh view of everything since the 1 year time jump through the eyes of Arya. The writers or directors, whoever, intended for us to see it from Arya's perspective, because I truly think they were setting her up to be a main character, because everything around season 1 and 2 literally revolved around Arya. Her storylines with Ezra, her family storylines, the fact she was close to Alison, and I think even just opening the show with her reflection in a mirror, they want us to be reflective on what's going on through the eyes of Arya. So then I think, whoa, let me turn the brightness down. So then, as they were building up Arya's, I think the story then shifts. And I think the story then shifts to Hannah. Hannah kind of becomes the next character, which very much takes the front of the show. And for a period of time, it's not a long period of time, but there's a lot of focus regarding Hannah. And I think this happens a lot around the time where she gets run over. Obviously, A openly targets her. She gets run over by A. And kind of the aftermath of that is shown quite a lot. And this is the time where Lucas was a big suspect, and she was obviously friends with Mona and Lucas. And then once Mona got revealed as A, there was the whole fallout of Hannah learning to manage that and whether she should forgive Mona or not, type of thing, and seeing her in Radley and keeping that from her friends. And then Lucas being an A suspect also. And then this is kind of the time where she got with Caleb as well, and Caleb was such a big thing in Pretty Little Liars and such a big thing for Hannah. And it was my personal favorite relationship pre-season 6B and 7 anyways. But that was like a big relationship. There was loads of people rooting for that relationship, and it was very long term. So that kind of took center stage as well. But also Hannah's family situation started to take center stage. And much like with Arya, now the sun's gone back in, let me turn the brightness back up. Similar to Arya and the show kind of focusing on her family and kind of the fallouts of everything, we're then directed on to Hannah. And through Hannah's family issues, we have Tom, who is her dad, her waste of space. Hannah has a real hard time with her dad. Her dad kind of abandoned Hannah and her mom and kind of left them really financially unstable so he could be with Isabel and Kate. And it's very much shown that he favors Isabel and Kate over Ashley and Hannah. And obviously Hannah being his biological daughter, it's really impactful on that. I have a really good personal relationship with my dad, and if I went through that, if he abandoned me to be with a stepdaughter, I couldn't imagine the feeling of just like not feeling loved and just feeling really kind of like not wanted and just like, you know what I mean? So I can't imagine what Hannah was kind of feeling at this point. And this becomes a huge focus because Kate and Isabel, Kate and Hannah have, you know, tension, fights and things like that, and it kind of brings Ashley into it a little bit, so that becomes quite a big focus and quite a big focal point of the show. But then we also have Ashley, who becomes a big point as well, because obviously she is with Wilden for a period of time to help Hannah out, but then that kind of turns sour and Wilden ends up getting killed. and Ashley is kind of in the frame for it because Ashley run him over. And that takes center stage because Ashley gets arrested for it. And then we also have the thing with where Ashley steals Esther's money, and she hides it in the lasagna box, and A steals it. Let's drop that famous text message because they were truly writing. They were truly in the writer's room for that. Ashley takes a big point in the show. Ashley becomes very loved by the audience, actually. I love Ashley. She warms up to the audience a lot. So I think the audience really root for Ashley. I think the audience want Ashley to do really well. So whenever she's in this spot of bother, it's quite like, oh, okay, like this is the problem. So Hannah's issues really take focal point, and I think it shifts immediately from Arya to Hannah kind of mid-show to present these issues a lot more. I think as well, going back to the Caleb thing, in the midst of, this underage relationship with Ezra and Arya, and then the whole, Maya dying and Maya and Emily not working out, and then whatever Spencer's going through at this time, it was really refreshing to see Caleb and Hannah, and I think they intentionally did that because it was a new relationship to root for, and one that was a lot more healthier, just a lot more chemistry in there, so that clearly takes center stage compared to the other relationships for a period of time. But I think Hannah was a really refreshing character. She was my favorite liar personally, because she also had a lot of importance because she had friendships which were not just the liars. When I was writing this, I really thought about the fact that we don't really see the other liars with people who aren't each other a lot of the time, and if we do, it's very short and it's not really for a period of time. However, with Hannah, she has these friendships with Lucas and Mona, who are very important characters in the show. So to see her interact with these really important characters is actually really refreshing. And I know that her and Mona obviously don't really stay friends post her being A, but I really enjoyed the Mona and Hannah friendship when it was healthy, at least. And just seeing her communicate with people that aren't the liars, I think it's really refreshing. Sometimes I just got a bit sick of them. Sometimes I was like, right, you annoy me now. I've got to see some fresh people on the screen. So to see these friendships, but also obviously they weren't always positive, and like that's the downside to it. But when it was good, and just seeing other interactions on the screen, good or bad, I really enjoyed it. And it was really refreshing, and that took center stage as well. Her friendship with Mona and Lucas was very kind of zoomed in on in points in the show. Obviously, once Mona had kind of confessed to being A, but also Lucas had a bit of suspicion for a little bit. That took center stage as well because, Caleb was trying to tell Hannah, you can't trust these people. But Hannah's like, no, they're my friends. Like, it's fine. So it was a whole battle between, learning for her whether she trusts these people, whether she feels safe with these people anymore, rather than her just being with the liars all the time. I personally think it was really refreshing to see that, because with the other liars, like, you don't really get to see them explore other friendships that much, to be honest, which I didn't really like. I like to see other people on the show here and there sometimes, But also Hannah's story projected the main story quite a lot and kept things moving. For example, like Hannah crashed Sean's car. Hannah then had to work at his parents' clinic to like work it off. And there Hannah found Toby's file where they learned about the Jenna and Toby relationship that was going on. It progressed the plot, a lot of her actions, and to me that's a sign of a main character, because if there's a lot of filler surrounding a character, I don't vibe with it, and I think like, oh, okay, like this is boring now, like this is not in the sense that this is not main character energy, everyone. But I feel like with Hannah, a lot of the things that she did and a lot of just the experiences that she had, and obviously her friendships and the fallout of what happened with her friendships, progressed the story a whole lot more. And I don't know, I think that is literally a sign of a main character. Hannah is also the one to be kind of first blackmailed. And by this, I mean the liars had received texts from A prior to this, but it was never like a you have to do this type of thing. But Hannah was the first one to kind of get a blackmail in terms of like, you need to do this for me type of thing. This is when Ashley steals the money from Esther's bank deposit thing, and Hannah has to do a bunch of things to earn it back. So she was the first one that A really targeted, I guess, like physically, in terms of like making her do things, rather than just like these like threatening messages that were just kind of coming through at this point. We see from her perspective kind of how dangerous A is and what A will make these liars do to kind of get their own way. But then we see the show truly shift on, and I think this is the real main character of Pretty Little Liars. This show then moves on to Spencer. You'll probably see online in like forums or on other Pretty Little Liars videos, a lot of people refer to Pretty Little Liars as the Spencer show, because probably from about season 4 or 5 onwards, kind of when Alison comes back, the show is fully surrounded by Spencer. Spencer is now the main character of the show. Everything revolves around Spencer. And this had kind of been laying under a rug for a little bit, because Spencer does have storylines that are quite prominent in the show earlier on. Obviously, her relationships with Ian and Ezra, and kind of her battle with her parents and Melissa. But it really kind of took focus kind of when Alison came back. And that's why I said Alison was kind of the secret main character, because when Alison came back, it was Spencer's show now. It wasn't really Alison's show anymore. I think the moment actually when things shifted was when Toby faked his death, which I think was actually season 3, because then we see Spencer kind of join the A team, and Spencer kind of goes off the rails a little bit, and she ends up going to Radley. So the show starts then to focus in on her a bit more, and I think this is the time where it happens. I think, like I said, there was underlying aspects of like Spencer being a main character because we knew her family quite well, her jealousy between her and Melissa. Melissa was set up a lot of times to be a suspect, so it was kind of always there. But I think season 3 was when they started that little shift, and then it gradually just got more and more, because the point as well where I think this is such a big thing, Spencer has these flashbacks regarding the night that Alison disappeared, and she doesn't know if she was the one who killed Alison or not. And I think when the whole show is surrounded by the story of who killed Alison De Laurentiis, if you have a character who was very close to her and part of the main group, who's kind of suspecting herself could be involved, I think they're setting her up to be a main character here, because that is such a big thing to implement just for like nothing. So this was also a point for me when I was like, okay, now it's Spencer. So like I said, Spencer's family kind of takes the front of everything. Obviously, we find out that Mary Drake is her mum. We find out that Jason is her... Well, see, we find out Jason is her brother quite early on. I think like season 2 or 3 sometime. But he actually turns out to be her like half brother and half cousin, I think. We find out Mary Drake has slept with Peter Hastings, and then we find out there was always a battle with Mary Drake and Jessica De Laurentiis. They're both twins, and Jessica ultimately took Alex Drake, who we find out Alex Drake is Spencer's twin, who is also A, and we find out Jessica took one of the babies, well, both of the babies, but kind of split them up, and that's how that happened. And then obviously Mary killed Jessica type of thing, and Mary Drake knew about Alex Drake. So everything revolves around Spencer towards the end of the show. Her whole family takes the front of it, and honestly, I forced myself to rewatch season 6B onwards. I don't really watch past the CC reveal when I do my rewatches because I don't really like it. I force myself to watch it. And I was watching it and I was kind of like, you know what? I feel like they made season 6B and 7 just for Spencer because the vibes were so off with all of the other girls. And some of them had storylines here and there, but it was really just Spencer's seasons. And I feel like they made these extra seasons, which I personally don't think needed to be done, specifically for Spencer, rather than to share equally between the girls, kind of like the main character aspect. Do you know what I mean? The family drama of Spencer really was the show, because before we had Mary Drake and Alex Drake and Jessica, we had the early family drama, which was obviously Spencer having her relationships with Ian and Ren, and then kind of her and Melissa fighting about it and falling out about it, and kind of the jealousy and the battle that was between them two. But also the drama between her parents. Veronica and Peter got a divorce, and Peter had had many affairs, and Veronica said she just couldn't handle it anymore. The family drama of Spencer literally was the show. Like, from earlier on, it carries throughout the entire show, the Hastings family drama, right until the very end of the show. You know, when Mona gets revealed as A, we literally find out with Mona and Spencer. The show tells us the A reveal through Spencer's experience with Mona. Later on, they end up battling to be on like the debate club or whatever it's, decathlon maybe, and there's a real battle going on between them, and we kind of see the dark side of Spencer a lot more later on in the show. Spencer's evil twin was literally the main villain of season 6B and 7, and although we had never met Alex Drake before, Alex goes back to kind of the very start of the story, even pre Alison De Laurentiis' disappearance, and also involves, you know, Ren and like main characters that Spencer had interacted with before. And ultimately, the villain of season 6B and 7 tortured the girls, not because of anything of Alison, because of Cece. And Cece was obviously her sister. Spencer was Cece's sister as well. And it was to get the killer of that, rather than, you know, like with Mona's A, it was because Alison had bullied her. With Cece's A, it was because the girls said they felt more free without Alison. But season 6B and 7 had nothing really to do with the motive-wise to do with Alison completely. And it was more around Spencer's kind of family aspect. So the show had gone from, you know, at the very start, it was Alison De Laurentiis, but now it's Spencer Hastings. I think also Spencer obviously kind of becomes like the leader of the group. Spencer's the one that kind of dismisses plans when they come up with plans, or makes the plans, or points out kind of they can't do this, they can't do that type of thing. She finds out about the NAT club a lot of the time, and people always go to Spencer for help, because Spencer is the main girl here. She's the main girl offering this help and this plan of what to do to change things. This is when she kind of takes a step forward as kind of like the leader kind of the group. Honestly, I think for season 6B and 7, if you take the other liars out of the story, bar like maybe Hannah, the story kind of will stay the same. Like, obviously things would have to change, but like there wouldn't be much difference because everything goes back to Spencer at this point. So that leads me on to Emily. I think Emily is the liar that definitely gets ignored the most. I felt Emily's presence a lot in the early seasons, season 1 and 2, when she was exploring her sexuality, and when she was with Maya. I really enjoyed the story of her learning about herself and her sexuality. I think it's such an important story. However, kind of after Maya dies and that whole situation with like Lyndon or Nate or whatever his name was happens, I feel like Emily fades a lot in the back. I never really felt her presence past that, which is a shame because I like Emily, and I think Emily is my least favorite liar because of this, because I don't really feel her presence past this, and I feel like she is the one to be ignored. And I know there's a huge issue regarding diversity on the show, and a lot of the people that die are the diverse people on the show. And I think there's an issue with that. And I think Emily got ignored a lot. And I think it's such an unfair position to put Emily in. I think a lot of people, not that they hate Emily's character, but kind of like me, she's not a favorite because personally, I feel like we didn't really experience a lot of her character. I feel like there was a lot of Emily that we kind of never really got shown. So she's my least favorite liar because of that. Because I didn't really get to see Emily that much. Emily kind of had a big story when she dug up Alison's body. So that was kind of like when she kind of took a front again. But then like she would just fade to the back because there would be other stories, like I said, with either Hannah or Spencer at this point in the show that would just take a much bigger front compared to that of Emily. I quite enjoyed seeing them explore the family dynamic between Emily and her parents, obviously when they found out about her sexuality and kind of the fallout of that. But also like once Pam had kind of, come to terms with everything and was fine with everything, nothing really happens with her parents either here and there. Her dad dies off screen at some point, but it's a lot of like Pam being like, oh, I'm just gonna go and see your dad, you can stay here type of thing. We don't really see her parents pass when she comes out. So I feel like that was such a big sign as well of Emily's character taking a step back. But it's a shame that they did that. I think they could have done more with Emily personally. And yeah, like I said with Alison, choked on my own saliva. Like I said with Alison, I never really felt like Alison was a main character, really. Because obviously we didn't have her physical presence in season 1 to 4. And then when she came back in season 5, I wasn't blown away by it because they did this redemption arc and I just wasn't really bothered by it. And I think the redemption arc really ruined Alison's character. I wouldn't have done it. Obviously, she went through a lot of trauma, so like I get it. But also like she was so psychotic and such a unique, really mean person. I don't think that can just change and be taken away. I really don't think I don't think it can. I did a whole video of rewriting Alison to fit how I would have done it. If you want to check that out, I'll leave that link down below. But yeah, I never really felt like Alison was a main character. Obviously she was there for the CC reveal, so that still had some weight and kind of made it a bit more full circle. But after the CC reveal, Alison wasn't really involved that much, to be honest, and Alison was really pushed back. She was a main character from season 1 to 4, but kind of like a hidden one because we hadn't experienced her firsthand, just through flashbacks. So that's kind of my perspective on the Alison situation. So in conclusion, I think it would have been a lot nicer to share kind of the main character aspect through the liars equally. I feel like there's a lot of kind of flip-flopping around it and quite a lot of like, oh, we'll focus on this character for like an episode, but then like never really come back to it type of thing. And I understand why they made Spencer kind of the front of the show, because I think Troyanne was known to be like the best actress on the show at that point. She acted her heart out on this show, and I think everything was kind of built for her post Alison coming back. I know that Troyanne spoke to the writers about them exploring the trauma of the liars a lot more, so whether that was an idea that came from that, I'm not sure, but I understand completely why they made Spencer kind of the front of the show. I would have liked to show developing stories a lot more and just not ending them quickly. Emily's kind of sexuality stuff ends quite quickly and quite soon, and then we also don't really see her parents past that, so it kind of stopped quite abruptly. I would have liked to see kind of it develop a bit more than kind of what it was, and I feel like they could have given a bit more time to it. And then ultimately, I think you should make your show go full circle. The show started with Alison De Laurentiis. Everything always goes back to Alison De Laurentiis, but the show, although she has like some links to Alex, I don't think it goes back to Alison at the end of the show. I don't think it does. It's very much on Spencer rather than it coming back to Alison. I would have liked a full circle thing. It does involve her here and there, but like not really. So ultimately, I think the main character of Pretty Little Liars is Spencer. I think they build her character up from the very start with like slow moving stories and kind of hints of like her family dynamic, but then as the show went on, she became more of a main character. But I do think season 1 especially, and a bit of season 2, Arya was set up to be the main character, but that kind of loosened with time. So that is it for this video. I would love to hear your opinions down below. Who do you think is the main character of Pretty Little Liars in your opinion? But also, if you have anything to say about what I said, I would love to hear down below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.